guys, what's up? It's Joe Rady from Rady's Rides. I'm back here at Jaguar Land Rover St. Petersburg, and guess what? I have one special sports car for you. What is it? It's this car right here. This is a 2004 Porsche 911 GT3. But before we get into this murdered out 6-speed manual rear-engined sports car, let's talk about what's going on here. It goes back to the 1960s. If you wanted performance, that's where people started to dial 911. The 911 came out in the mid-1960s, and Porsche has not looked back since then. Now, it's crazy to think that in the 80s, Porsche was thinking about eliminating the 911 and replacing it with the Porsche 928. That was a front-engine V8 powered Porsche. Thank God they did not, because to this day, the 911 still stays true to its basic form. Now, what's interesting about this generation, this is known as the 996, and it's famous or infamous for quite a few things. First of all, this is the first generation of the water-cooled 911. So that switch from air-cooled, which the last generation was the really beloved 993 generation of 911s. This one, the 996, at first, a lot of the hardcore Porsche aficionados and fans were kind of pissed off by it. Not only because it was water-cooled, but also because of some of the styling and the parts that were used. Now, what's fascinating is that there's never been a GT3 before this generation. So the 996 generation, which started in 1997, was the first model designation, the first chassis designation to have a GT3 performance spec. In the early years, it was specifically about homologation, and then it became one of those things so that Porsche Motorsports could have that high revving flat six engine. Now, what I want to find out is, does this 911 GT3 deserve some of the hate that it gets, even to this day, or is it one of those special sports cars that brings a true driving engagement and experience, especially if you look at something like a C5 Z06. So let's go ahead, let's dive into this 2004 GT3 and find out. Right off the bat, the murdered out look is looking really clean, and 911s just have that timeless design. When you see them, you know exactly what it is, and no matter what generation it is, they are so timeless. Now, at the front of the business, this is where we're gonna have one of the infamous parts of this car. It's the runny egg. They call this the runny, drippy egg. The reason why is that traditionally 911s had round or oval headlights. This one, as you can see, has that extra illumination. The other bad news, besides the style and people not liking it, is that with this 996 generation, they had to, and when I say they, I'm talking about Porsche, had to figure out a cheaper way, a less inexpensive way to build 911s. They really had to hone in and clean up their whole assembly process because Porsche was not doing well financially. They actually hired Toyota, yes, that Toyota, to look at their assembly process and kind of streamline it and help where they could with saving costs. So this headlight housing is the same housing of a car that first appeared in the late 90s, new to the Porsche lineup. That was the Porsche Boxster. And I really think something as simple as sharing the same headlight housing was one of those things that pissed people off, especially with the runny egg. It's getting to the point now that if you're looking for value, these are value leaders because they don't have that die-hard fan base like the air-cooled 911s that are driving up the prices. So if you're looking for something that has performance, something that's special, wait until you hear the asking price on this. It's gonna surprise you, but let me know what you think about the runny egg headlight. Now, working our way down, of course, we have full functionality, still have that wire mesh finish, heat exchangers behind. I like the way it's got this vertical splitter. And then speaking of splitters, you have this lower air dam that's meant to stop air from going underneath the vehicle. And like I said, the GT3 is really meant to be that race car that Porsche ran in sports car racing and sports car endurance racing that was available to the common person. Now, as we come across that low slung nose, classic Porsche design in the front fascia, you'll notice more functionality in the center with the wire mesh. This car, it has been lowered. It is sitting on lowering springs, and it actually has a full Öhlins race suspension that has been added to it to give it that extra track superiority. But let me know what you think about the whole front end of this 911. Now, as we rise up, of course, you got to have the Porsche crest on that front hood. And just like all the other generations, we have a front mounted trunk because the flat six is all the way back past the rear axles. Now, as I come around the bend, what are we working with? Wheels and tires. So what you're going to find are these GT3 spec wheels. And if you're wondering, well, Joe, what's the size of the wheel? It's an 18-inch wheel, which I know by today's standards, if you buy a new 911 GT3, you got 20-inch wheels up front, 21-inch wheels out back. So it's kind of weird to see an 18-inch wheel, but let it be known that you could get a large variety of track spec tires and performance spec tires for this vehicle. This one, of course, has the Michelin Pilot Sport tires. And if you're wondering, well, what's the size? Up front, they're 235 on the width, 40 series sidewall. We got that massive 6-piston Brembo caliper with pageed yellow track pads, and we have special 2-piece rotors that are slotted to cut down on heat buildup and also help with that rotating mass. But just looking at this car, it's got the perfect gap between the top of the tire and the inside of the fender. They also added clear side marker lights. This is one of those things that many Porsche owners immediately change, going from the amber to the clear. But let me know what you think about the wheel and brake setup on the front end of this 911. Now, working down the side, everything is painted, no sunroof on a GT3. I like the way on the 996 how they did the door handles. It's sort of like a half flush door handle. You just reach underneath and pop her open. That side skirt extends down, and like I said, all the body work on this thing is what the 911, what Porsche was running in endurance racing, like the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona. Now, at the rear, you'll see that we have a fully cross-drilled rotor to help cut down on that heat buildup. We got the Brembo calipers, and then tires out back with these Michelin Pilot Sports. Out back, it's 295 on the width, 30 series sidewall. Of course, we have a limited slip diff to get the power to the ground. It's incredible to be with this car because you sort of notice just how much smaller it is compared to a new 911 GT3. It's crazy how the cars have gotten larger over time. Now, as we swing around back, when you go GT3, this was your spec wing, pedestal style, stationary. It's not adjustable. But one of the things I like, and I have Steven kind of swing around and show you, is you have those air intakes here for that flat six, just open. And then as we swing it around back, we got the clear tops, red taillights, turn signals, brake lights, like the way it's got that 2004 vibe. You got an additional kick up, sort of like a duckbill spoiler underneath the pedestal wing, and then the GT3 badge, and we have our dual outlet exhaust. Nice oval slash cut, oval opening slash cut, and very simple on the lower rear bumper. You'll notice there's not a bunch of diffusers and extra canards and all that stuff. It's a very clean, sleek design, which makes it timeless. But why don't we go ahead, let's pop this rear engine cover and talk about performance. All right, guys, tail end of the business. We got the rear engine hatch lifted up. This is cool. This is where you could actually see the engine in a GT3. Today's 911s, you cannot. You can actually see where that flat six, how it's mounted really low in the chassis, the alternator, the air box, the throttle body. What are we actually looking at? For this particular generation, the 996 GT3, you're looking at a 3.6 liter flat six that pumps out 375 horsepower, 284 pound-feet of torque. Now that may not sound like a lot, but you gotta remember, this is back in 2004. So let's talk about, real quick, a Z06. A C5 Z06 had 405 horsepower. So that's the difference there. And then wait until you hear the weight. But we only have 6-speed manual only. No PDK or automatic or any of that garbage in this car. It's a 6-speed manual. This is a driver's car. The engine redlines at a healthy 8,200 RPM. The vehicle weighs 3,025 pounds. 3,025 pounds. 0 to 60, if you know how to do the manual transmission dance, in 3.9 seconds, quarter mile in 12.2 at 118 miles an hour. And if you have a long enough straightaway, you have a top speed of 190 miles an hour. 18 mpgs in the city. What makes this engine special is it comes from Porsche Motorsports with titanium connecting rods, totally different engine casing. And then this particular one has a new clutch, new flywheel. And one of the questions that everybody asks on this generation is, has the coolant lines been welded or pinned? They have been welded on this vehicle. If you know 996s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But why don't we go ahead, let's fire up this GT3 and hear it sound. All right, guys, we are inside this 2004 Porsche 911 GT3. It's crazy because the interior in this car looks fantastic. Everything fits so well, and that's what you get when you get a Porsche. I mean, if you got a C5 Z06, this car has a little over 60,000 miles. If you had a C5 Z06 with a little over 60,000 miles, the interior is not going to look as good as this one. Now, I know you're saying, well, Joe, what's the asking price? Good question. Asking price is $119,000, but let's see what you get when you go 2004 GT3 to the door panels. Even back then, the leather, the contrast stitching, a little bit of silver, nice, tasteful, clean, and this was the first total redesign, this generation, first total redesign of the 911. Carpet on the door panel was a thing in the 90s and the early 2000s. You got a little pocket there large enough for 2 Bavarian cream donuts. And then going from the door panel to the dash, love just how everything is far forward. It's got that 911 feel in here. You slide on in, no freaking infotainment system. I don't need a stupid screen. You got your AC controls and the AC works wonderful. This is gonna be your button to lock and unlock the door. So if you're picking up your hot date and you don't wanna look like a clown and you're trying to unlock the door, this is where you push it. You got your cup holder. You're not drinking in my 911 GT3, that's for sure. And then of course you gotta have the Porsche sound system with the CD player. And what's great is even things that get usually lost, like the cigarette lighter here for the 12 volt, it's here in its place. Down below, what's even better than the CD player are these actual CD holders. So you could have your Pearl Jam, you could have, you know, Slipknot, Two Live Crew, whatever you're into. You got the CD holders, and that's how you gain access to those CDs. Down here, of course, you got to have the German Twinkie holder for Twinkies. This one has the carbon fiber center console package, also the carbon fiber shifter. Love that 6-speed. Nice short throws. This is where the magic happens with the freaking Porsche crest on it. These are your buttons for your windows. I like the way they're not in the door panels. You even got your Porsche branded carbon fiber e-brake. You got a place here for, I would say, a roll of lifesavers. And then you have a lockable center storage area here, which right now it's actually locked. So kind of cool the way you can lock that. It's got the GT3 stamped in there, embossed, and then the seats, Nice sports seats with the Porsche crest, the leather. It's partial electric, partial manual. And then of course the best part about a GT3, no back seat. They remove everything, the sound deadening material, the back seat, the whole 9 yards to give you obviously that light 3,025 pounds. Plus wait until we go on throttle in here. It's gonna sound glorious. And we have full race text, which is what Porsche calls Alcantara, and red seat belts worth an extra 5 horsepower. But why don't you come over here at the business end? I want to show you behind the wheel in this GT3. All right, guys, business time, come on in. But before you do, I love the German engineering. Look at the secret compartment for your Twinkies. Easily get 8-track day Twinkies in there. It's just smart engineering. Nice aluminum sill plate with the GT3 badge. And then look at this pedal box, right out of a freaking race car. Aluminum dead pedal, clutch, brake, and throttle. Perfect for heel, toe, downshifting. Sitting in the seats, they're not as grippy lateral-wise as you would want. They did have optional race buckets. I would prefer those, but these are definitely going to be much more comfy for when you're just doing your twisty road driving in your local area. Lots of headroom. That's something that Porsche has always done well. You get the helmet on. I'm 6 feet tall, not even close to the headliner. Steering wheel, this is what they had back in 2004. No buttons, leather with the Porsche crest. It is a tilting and telescoping steering wheel, and of course you got the key, the ignition always on the left of the steering wheel, and then that beautiful gauge cluster. Nice white face gauges, that tack, that red lines at 8,200 RPM, flanked by all the other analog gauges. No digital screens, none of that garbage. You can save that for your video games when you're playing Gran Turismo 47. But you know what? I want to show you in the frunk. I want to shove you in the frunk, but I also want to show you in the frunk what's going on, because I'm ready to go on throttle in this Porsche. I think one of the things that's always made a 911 so popular, besides the performance, is of course when it comes to interior cargo space. So you have that front mounted trunk, easily get at least one carry-on and a duffel bag in there, and then you can see the rest of everything else is covered up nicely. Of course you have your coolant, because this is not an air cooled, this is a water cooled. But one of the things to remember about water cooled is that they're able to get way more performance out of these engines. But why don't we go ahead, if you're ready, I'm ready, let's get inside so I could show you what the 911 GT3 is all about. All right guys, we are inside this 2004 Porsche 911 GT3. Right away, what you're gonna experience in this car is just a more visceral, engaging experience. Less sound deadening material than even modern GT3s. You have hydraulic assist on the steering, which allows you to feel everything with such precision, just as if you were a brain surgeon. But why don't we go ahead? Going at a slow roll is not what this car is about, unless you're posing at your local Cars and Coffee event. What this car is about is going on throttle. So if you're ready, I'm definitely ready. On throttle, here we go. So what's great is that you have that high revving flat six, 3.6 liters of goodness. It gives you an eargasm, and it's so linear. You're not waiting for turbos to kick in. You're not waiting for any of that stuff. It's like it's such a linear, smooth power delivery. The gearbox, nice short throws, crisp engagement, and like I had just mentioned, the hydraulic steering is spot on the money. It's like you don't know just how good they were back when it was all hydraulics, before electric steering racks. It's so good. It's so good for feel. Clutch, with that new clutch, pickup is at a good point. It's a little on the heavy side, but still, is going to give you plenty of great feedback. The brakes, of course, because they are race spec brakes, those Paget yellow race spec brakes, they do make some noise, but that's, you know, that's a race car, right? I mean, that's what happens when you go to a grippier track, street/track style pad, is they as you can hear, they make noise. I mean, that's just the way it is. What's great is, though, is that driving this car, so comfortable, so smooth, but yet visceral at the same time. I don't know how Porsche did it, but they did it. Rear wheel drive, nicely balanced, not a bunch of nannies cutting the power and all that kind of stuff. Drop it down to second. On throttle, here we go. Look at that, you just rev it all the way out. I didn't even have to downshift, and that's the beauty of that high revving flat six. God, absolutely spectacular. And the grip level, it corners so well, and for a car that's 20 years old, crazy. Now, comparing this to a Z06, Z06 is gonna be C5, Z06 is gonna be heavier, has a little bit more horsepower, 30 more horsepower, which isn't really that crazy, but you do have extra weight in the Z06, and that's where this thing, it's like threading the eye of a needle. I love it. I love the feeling of this car. Just amazing what Porsche has done over the years. The sound, it's just, it's freaking wonderful. But I mean, you're getting good feedback. I feel like I almost feel, you know what I feel like? I feel like almost like a ventriloquist, like I'm operating a puppet. And the reason why I say that is because I feel like my body parts are connected perfectly to all the input areas of this car. The steering wheel, the throttle, the brakes, the clutch. I would like to see a little bit better seat here. I don't feel like I'm sitting in the seat. I feel like I'm sitting on the seat. It's just kind of weird. And there's not a lot of lateral support from when you're in the twisty bits. But man, the sound is, and this gearbox, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. On throttle, here we go. Look at this. What a fantastic experience. I've driven a 996 once before. It was an older video back from like early 2019. It was a Tiptronic, which, that's the automatic transmission before the PDK. Terrible, terrible transmission. But this 6-speed, and with that flat six in a GT3, sign me up. I don't give a damn what the headlights look like. Sign me up. But we're gonna go ahead. We need to get back to Jaguar Land Rover St. Pete before I take this one home. So I'll see you in a split second. All right, guys. These are the days I live for, where you have a vehicle that you just really connect with. And that's what this 911 GT3 is all about, is the connection. Definitely want to thank Miro and the rest of the crew getting us access to this vehicle. Let me know what you think. If you want some old school performance, is this 996 GT3 the way to go? Does it bring more than a C5 Z06? Let me know down in that comment section. But if you're new to the channel, you're on your way out, hit that subscribe button. I promise you it's worthwhile. Come back for more. If you are a subscriber, thank you for being part of the Raised Rides family. Gotta get up to Stephen Flood Photography, working that camera like a champ. Show him some love in the comment section. Thank you, Stephen, for all that you do. And just like always, guys, I'll see you on the next ride.